Hello, I'm Dr. Jennifer Rumpel, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about the process from getting from medical school all the way into actually having your first real job. So the steps that I took, I first of all started medical school at Wayne State School of Medicine in Detroit, and from there I decided to pursue an internal medicine residency where I did at William Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak, Michigan. And after my residency, I really had to think hard about whether or not I wanted to specialize. I was considering becoming an internist and staying in internal medicine, but when I did a rotation in allergy and immunology, I decided that I was very interested in that, and I liked the angle that I could see both kids and adults as an allergist, and so I decided to do a fellowship. And I did match into a fellowship at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, and I did a 2-year fellowship following my 3-year residency. And 5 years later, after graduating medical school, here I am now as an attending, and I am currently on staff here at Providence Park Hospital in Novi, as well as at Beaumont in Royal Oak. I have an office in the Novi area as an allergist and immunologist. I have one partner here in the office, and I'm currently working here since July 1st when I finished my fellowship. The greatest challenge to me when I first started my residency as a first-year resident, which we also call an intern, it's the other name of a first-year resident, would be that you are working a lot. So you're working around 80 hours a week, and medical school is hard because you're studying a lot and you're working a lot, and then the 3rd and 4th year you're doing rotations. But as a resident, you have to be able to balance working 80 hours a week, and simultaneously you need to be reading, because every year you have an in-training exam, and at the end of the whole residency you have to take boards which you're expected to sit for and of course pass. And so I think the hardest challenge for me was finding the time to not only work all those hours but also read and keep up on keeping my knowledge base up to date. So I would say that the best part about leaving medical school and starting residency is that you learn so much in medical school. You are constantly taking exams and learning and reading and studying, and finally you get to be a resident. And my favorite part was that I got to take all of that learning and all of those hours studying and staying up late at night and being able to apply them to the patients that I get to see. And finally, you're taking all that information that you're always reading and you get to apply it in real life and actually make people better. And I think that all of us, somewhere in there, have that desire to help people and to make people feel better. So the first time that you have a patient that sees you, and then the next day when you round on them, they feel better because of a decision you made, you will feel a sense of satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment, and be happy that you were able to help that patient. On the other hand, I think the hardest thing about leaving medical school for residency is that what you decide, because you do have a lot more autonomy as a resident than as a med student, actually does impact a patient's life. So you always have to be aware that if you make a mistake, which we all do make mistakes, but if you make a mistake, for example, giving the wrong medication, or making a decision that would negatively impact the patient, that can affect the patient in a negative way. It can affect their creatinine and change their kidney function, or if you accidentally prescribe something the patient's allergic to, they can have a reaction. There are several things that can happen, so we always have to be on our toes, even if we're post-call. That was probably the hardest thing for me. So a typical day for me as an internal medicine resident varied based upon the rotation that I was on, but for the most part, I would get to the hospital around 6 a.m. So I would wake up in the morning probably around 5 a.m. because I purposely lived very close to the hospital. Get ready for work and then leave to the hospital around 6. I would go to my locker, put my things away, and then I would go and sit down in the resident room where there's computers and start looking up labs on various patients that I have to see. When I was in the intensive care unit, that could have started a little earlier in the morning even. In general, in that case, I would go to the intensive care unit, find out which patients I was rounding on for that morning. We would have a team of several residents and we would take the patient load and split it. And so, say I had 5 patients, I would look up all the labs on those patients, and then I would begin seeing those patients. Now in the intensive care unit, for obvious reasons, the patients are very critical until you have fewer patients that you round on. On the regular floors, there could have been several more than 5 I'm not even sure, even up to 10 patients that I needed to round on the weekends, maybe even a couple more than that. I would begin seeing each patient one by one on my own. I had their lab information. I would talk to them, see how their night was, see if they're having any acute problems. Do they have abdominal pain? Do they have a bowel movement overnight? Are there any issues that they want to discuss with me today? Are the reasons why they were hospitalized being addressed appropriately? In general, just making sure that everything's going okay with the patient, and if there isn't something that's going okay, or if something worsened overnight, we'd have to figure out why and obviously try to treat that. And of course, always, vitals are vital, as you probably have heard before, so I would walk around with the vitals and make sure I have those, and try to address why the blood pressure was too high or why the heart rate is greater than 140 today. And then do the physical exam, which is obviously very pertinent. You have to do that on every patient, and that tells you a lot. You know, if they have an acute abdomen, you can palpate and figure that out. And in the intensive care unit, you can't speak to most of the patients. A lot of them are intubated and sedated, so the physical exam is so important, and taking a complete physical exam is so important. And you become very good at auscultating while there is a lot of surrounding noises, such as the machines that are beeping around you and the alarms that are going off because somebody in a nearby room is coding and you need to go and interrupt your physical exam and start CPR and things like that. After rounds, then we would get together with the attending, and you would start going over each patient with the attending, and they would ask you questions. And as we all call that, that's called being pimped on rounds. And you would be asked questions about the patient, and hopefully you know the answer to it. And some attendings can tolerate you not knowing the answer. Other attendings are not so happy when you don't know the answer, and you're expected to look it up and figure that out if you don't. Also, when you're a new resident, you probably would have already staffed the case with your senior resident prior to meeting with the attending. So that helps, because the senior resident would say, well, you know, what do you think about this? And, you know, the attending is probably going to ask you about this, so look it up before we meet with him. So that does help as well. After rounds with the attending, usually it's nearing middle of the day, and then there are learning lectures. So you would attend conferences where you would learn about pertinent topics, kidney failure, thyroid problems. For me as an internist, you learn about everything, broad spectrum type topics, because we learn about each specialty in internal medicine. And then after lunch, you follow up on topics with each patient. Sometimes you need to take care of CPRs if you're on call for that day. At my hospital, it depended which team was on call, and that would decide who was actually taking care of all the CPRs. And at any given time, when there is a code blue, then that team needs to take care of coding the patient. And that does mean running. So if it's a large hospital, hopefully you have your running shoes on and you have to go run and take care of the code, and there's always a code captain that directs the CPR. After that, it really depended on the day. If I was on call, then I would stay there from 6 a.m. until the next day at noon. There is a call room that in between, in the evening, if you had time to take a nap, you could try taking a nap. However, you have a pager that would frequently wake you up, and it would wake you up several times throughout the night. And for the most part, you don't really sleep, but you can try to take naps in between being paged. And the pages would be, the pager would go off whenever there was a CPR, and a lot of CPRs would happen in the middle of the night. Then the next day, even when you're on call, you do the exact same routine. You look up labs on your patients, you go around on the patients, you staff them with your senior resident, and then you staff them with the attending. And then if I was post-call, I would try to leave at 12 o'clock to be within at the time I was training, 30-hour limited time that I should be there on call. I believe now that's been limited to less than 30 hours. I think it's more in the realm of 24 to 28 hours, so it's a little better for you guys coming out now. If it was a day that I was not on call, then I would wrap up my patients after rounds and after the learning lectures and all of that, and try to go home anywhere between 5 and 7. It really depended on the day, and sometimes it's a good day and you can even go home at 3. The advice that I wish that I would have had before starting residency would revolve a little bit around time management, but also around future planning. In terms of time management, it's really important to recognize that you are working a very long and heavy work week. Very often you do not have weekends. In fact, you will soon learn the term golden weekend. That is the one weekend that you have off a month when you are on call. We call it our golden weekend because we are very happy to have one weekend off. And what that means is that when you have time off, you have to become very good at budgeting what needs to be done at that time. If you are somebody who is in a residency and actually has children and a husband and other responsibilities, then it becomes very hard. Probably all of your free time will be spent with family and also reading. If you have the luxury of only needing to worry about yourself, then you'll probably be able to go home, do some reading, and still have time for other activities. I myself was not married during my residency, so I would spend time going to the gym to get exercise because that was something that helped me with stress release, and reading, of course, which is important, seeing friends, things like that. I think it's really important to maintain a social life during your residency. Otherwise, it does happen, even to us as doctors, where some people fall into stages of depression and have anxiety problems and things like that. And it's because they're so focused on work and on reading and they don't make time for anything else. And obviously after a while, they do burn out. So it's important to cut out time for yourself, carve out time for yourself, just like you did when you were studying for your USMLE. You can't just study. We're all people at the end of the day. So you need to remember to make time for yourself. And that golden weekend, don't spend the entire golden weekend reading. You need to make time for yourself to go out and enjoy yourself and have a break, even if that means just sitting in front of the TV and decompressing. Whatever it is that makes you happy, you need to do that. The other thing is future planning. This is very important. If you're doing a residency such as pediatrics or internal medicine, and you're thinking about maybe doing a fellowship or even general surgery and you want to do a fellowship out of that, you need to start planning early. Do not wait until right before it's time to match into a fellowship to decide, hey, I want to do a fellowship. I, at the time, when I was going through my residency, needed to go through the match during my second year. So that's very early. I believe now they've shifted that to the third year. So I did find somebody who I would call my mentor, and he helped me a great deal. He helped me establish a research project, which is key. He helped me find a topic that's interesting to research, and he helped me decide whether or not the specialty would be for me. So that is my advice to you. If you are thinking about specializing, find a mentor, find a research project, get started early. Don't wait right until before match. There's a lot you need to do before it's time to actually go through the match process. And the match process for fellowship is very similar to that for residency. You do have to interview, you do have to make a list. It is a lottery and you need to match. If you decide to go that route, it is high stress and it also is very expensive because you need to travel. I traveled all over the country for my fellowship interviews just like I did for residency. So I would start saving for that early as well. So my final words of wisdom would be that medicine is a very dynamic field and times are changing right now and very quickly. And if you are keeping up with the news, then you know that with the Affordable Care Act comes many changes that affect we as physicians. So my advice is don't pick your specialty based on the income earning potential that exists right now for that specialty. Things are so dynamic right now and they're changing so quickly that that income earning potential could be very different for you once you're finished with your residency and or fellowship. Pick something that you love, pick a field that makes you happy, pick a field that you think would fit comfortably with the kind of life that you want. If you are somebody who does not want to wake up in the middle of the night and drive to the hospital for an acute GI bleed, then you probably shouldn't become a GI specialist. If you're somebody that likes that kind of action and doesn't mind getting up in the middle of the night, then general surgery, trauma, GI, all of those things could work for you. So pick something that fits your lifestyle and pick something that you love, but don't pick something based on the assumed prestige associated with that specialty, and don't pick something based on the income potential. Pick something that fits you. And so finally, I wish you all good luck as you start this journey. I really enjoyed my residency and fellowship process, and for me, I enjoyed both residency and fellowship more than medical school. It was so nice to be able to apply all of that studying and all of that reading to real life and to helping patients, and I hope that you guys enjoy all of it as much as I did. Goodbye.